It did it.
And we're recording. Okay. That's great. I see people are starting to join. Thank you, everyone. We're waiting to get all the participants in here for the Chimpanzees in Need Emergency Rescue Insider Briefing. It's a mouthful. This is webinar style, so you will be muted, and please submit any questions you have in the chat box. And thank you for joining us. We have some great guests today and some super exciting updates that I think we've been waiting all year to share. So it's just really, it's a good time for us. And we're happy to share the news with everyone who helped us get to this point, because it took a village, and it still will, to get all those chimps out. Great. That number's climbing. Welcome, everyone. We'll start in just a few moments. We have Cassie Carter helping us out behind the scenes. So Cassie, I'll let you tell me when you think is a good time to kick it off.
All right, we'll give everybody another minute or so to get settled in. I see people pouring in, which is awesome.
Great.
Welcome.
They want to hear from Shaun. No pressure, Shaun.
They want to hear from Erica and Ed, I'm sure. Of course.
I just want to see pictures of him.
Of course, really. Patti. They really want to hear from Patti. She's gonna have all the good stuff to tell.
We want to see the pictures of the chimps. That's what we want.
Those happy chimps, happy rescued chimps. Welcome if you're just joining us. This is the Chimpanzees in Need Insider Briefing. We're about to get started in just a minute or so. This is webinar style, so we can't hear or see you, but you will be able to submit questions in the chat. And we will be we will be answering as many questions as we can right at the end.
And we still have lots of people joining us, Erica, so let's give everybody another minute.
You got it.
Before we get started.
We have a nice comment. Marie Coco said, so happy Center for Great Apes was able to take Jeter. He looks so happy there, and he really does. They all do. So we're going to see some great photos and hear some sweet, sweet updates from Patti Ragan in just a little bit. We're so happy for those chimps, and we're so grateful that Center for Great Apes was able to take them, because I know that was no easy feat on their part. So you tell me, Cassie, it looks like maybe people are starting to hop in, and I don't see the number climbing at it just hopped up a little bit.
So I think that we are ready to get started so that we can get through everything today and give a chance for questions at the end. So Erica, go ahead and kick it off.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome to all of you. This is the Chimpanzees in Need Insider Briefing. We have some really exciting year-end updates to share with you. And I know it's been a few months since we held one of these Zoom meetings, so there's lots to talk about. Thank you for joining. This is a webinar style presentation, so we can't see you. You will be muted, but you can submit comments and questions in the chat box. And we're excited to hear your thoughts and answer as many questions as we can throughout this presentation. There is a Q&A session set up at the end specifically, but we'll also try to answer things as we go if possible. So if you don't already know me, my name is Erica Fleury. I serve as the program director of the North American Primate Sanctuary Alliance, or NAPSA. NAPSA is a coalition of 10 of the leading primate sanctuaries on the continent who care for over 820 rescued primates. And we are leading this Chimpanzees in Need emergency rescue effort focused on safely and responsibly rehoming the chimpanzees from the wildlife waste station outside of Los Angeles. So I'm joined by some really exciting people today. We have Patti Ragan from Center for Great Apes, Shaun Monson, director and filmmaker, and Ed Pert from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I think now is a great time to have them introduce themselves. We can start with Ed.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Pert. I'm the regional manager for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm also the project manager for this particular project for the department. And I think Patti's up next.
Hi, I'm Patti Ragan. I'm the founder and director of the Center for Great Apes. We are one of 7 chimpanzee sanctuaries in North America and the only orangutan sanctuary. And we have 71 great apes now, which is a lot for us. And we have 27 orangutans. And with the Great Ape from Wildlife Waste Station, we now have 44 chimpanzees.
Amazing.
And Shaun, let me introduce Shaun. You're up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shaun Monson. I'm a documentary filmmaker and probably the least qualified among the people you're listening to today because all I do is document. But I have had the rare opportunity to see these chimps and witness their exodus from one home to another, and it's been awe-inspiring and quite majestic experience, really, to see them and the people who come forward to care for them and help them be rehomed. So I'm happy to be here as well. Thanks. Back to you, Erica.
Thank you, Shaun. Yeah, so it's been a wild ride so far, but we're all happy to be doing this and really happy with the results and the progress that we've made. So we're now about 2 years into this effort, and I'm really excited to share that we've raised over, well, close to $2.3 million from over 1,000 donors. Just today, we heard the thrilling news that the American Anti-Vivisection Society is generously giving the campaign $100,000, which is just, I mean, I had tears when I heard the news. So I'm on cloud 9 today, and it's just been wonderful to see large donors, individual donors, foundations, all coming together on behalf of these chimpanzees. So because of all of you, we have successfully rehomed 23 of the chimpanzees so far. Most recently, that was a group that we called the Great 8 that went to Center for Great Apes, and we're going to hear from Patti about how they're doing. We have secured placement for 11 of the chimpanzees that remain at the waste station. Those 11 will be going to Chimp Haven in Louisiana in 2022. And we are diligently working on solutions for the other 7 that remain at the waste station. We've received endorsements for the campaign from celebrities like Dr. Jane Goodall and activist celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio, Joaquin Phoenix, and Rooney Mara. And that leads into the special thank you I want to extend to Shaun himself and Joaquin and Rooney, who he looped into the effort, for donating their incredible talents to help us put together a short film. Well, Shaun put together the short film, highlighting the plight of the waste station chimpanzees and how we can all help. So you can watch that film if you haven't already. It's called A Checkered Past, and you can watch it at chimpsinneed.org, as well as on NAPSA's YouTube channel. And I'm really excited for Shaun and Patti to share more about their work. I think that's why we're all here. So let's talk to Patti right now. I know we've got some great photos to share. Just recently, these 8 chimps were moved to Center for Great Apes. And I was lucky enough, along with Shaun, to be there. This photo is Wildlife Waste Station staff wheeling out one of the chimpanzees at the waste station to be loaded onto a specialized trailer from Project Chimps, which is another NAPSA member sanctuary who they didn't have space to take in more chimpanzees, but they had this incredible transport trailer and team that has the expertise in moving chimpanzees all across the country. So we're really fortunate to have their support as well. So here you can see members of the transport team from Project Chimps and also from Center for Great Apes. And the day was just a symphony of everyone working together on behalf of these chimps. I think we were all happy to be there and just so excited for them. And it flowed really well. So you can see the truck moving on down the highway there. And if you're wondering how we got that picture, it's because there was a part of the team was following in another vehicle. And I just love that sunset. It just really exemplifies the peace that we all felt that day and the hope for these chimpanzees. So I know the next few slides show what happened after that. So Cassie, let's go to the next slide. And now this is one of the chimpanzees being unloaded at Center for Great Apes. Once they traveled, what was it? I think 2,600 miles all the way over to Patti. Patti, I know that it was certainly no small feat to transport these guys. So can you tell us a little bit about what went into this magical day?
Sure. before they ever came to us, before this day happened, health certificates needed to be issued, which meant veterinarians in California had to do extensive physicals and to make sure that everybody was okay and they could get a health certificate. We had to get permits to come into Florida, arrange that. That's our veterinarian, Dr. Murphy, at the top there. I had 2 veterinarians and 2 caregivers that went on the team, and they did follow. We had to rent a SUV that followed the van, and they stopped every 3 hours along the entire route. Took about 52 hours straight through driving, and they followed and they checked on the chimps every 3 hours, gave them food and water, and just made sure everybody was calm. And I have to say, behind Dr. Murphy, you can see a window in the trailer. Every one of the crates had a window, and the chimps were able to eat and drink and make their nests with blankets and look out the windows, and they were completely calm. It was a wonderful transport, and we are grateful to Project Chimps for letting us use their team and their trailer. So we unloaded them into a new night house that we just built, and it has 10 bedrooms in it. And we already had rescued a group of chimpanzees from Missouri about 3 months ago that are in half that building. And then the Sunshine 7, which is the group of 7 that we originally agreed to take, went into the 5-bedroom side, and they are there for now and doing great. And then this is Jeter that we're unloading, and Jeter is not in the group. He's been alone for years, and he was raised as a pet. So he went on to our quarantine facility, which was across the sanctuary, and it wouldn't roll in our soft ground. So we had our lift there, and we were able, and one of our caregivers walked along talking to him, and he was calm, and we took him to his new area, and which is right across from 2 elderly chimps, or one's 40 and one's 50, that are from the Oklahoma facility where Tiger King was, and they could not stop looking at Jeter, and he was very interested in them. So we haven't seen any aggression. We'll find Jeter a companion. We just need to take his time and when he's ready. And the next slide, I think, is inside our night houses. These are 2 of the boys. It's Josh and Ewok peeking out in one of the 5 bedrooms that they occupy now. Their outside area is right out there connected with chutes, but we haven't quite completed the chutes yet. And that's part of the rest of our building project. So for a few days, maybe another couple of weeks, they'll be inside, but they have lots of space, and they've been eating well. And you'll see some of the I think the next slide shows one of our girls. This is Maud, and she has 3 carrots, and this is all within 30 minutes after their arrival. And she walked around, they explored the 5 bedrooms, they looked out all the windows, and what they're doing right now in their first week or 2 here is getting to know our routine and our caregivers. And they have 3 caregivers that are assigned to them, and on their days off and so forth, they eat really well, and we've seen no altercations among them. They're all supportive, they groom, they play, and completely relaxed. I think the next slide is also Maud. No, this is 2 of the boys. The one at the mesh is Mystery, and he was one of the youngest ones that came from Lemsip as a baby in 1996. And the other one is Josh eating a sweet potato. And I'm still learning the difference of the 4 males and 3 females. Some of them are easy to tell, but the girls all look alike to me. So we're learning them, but my staff all know. And the next slide, I think, is Maud. And well, Maud is in the hammock, and I want to point out this was with 45 minutes after she was unloaded, after taking a 52-hour trip across country, immediately grabbed a pear, a pepper, and you see the carrot in her hammock, and just relaxed and put her foot up and was completely at home. And that was very exciting for us to see them so calm and so supported by each other. So this group has lived together for 20 years, and it's great that they're together. And then on the left side is Jeter. And Jeter's story is that he was born in a Hollywood compound and sold to another trainer who raised him in his home. And he had him for 5 years. He was inside the house sleeping with him, and would nest in the bed with him. And so he did get out to be with another chimp there, but was not compatible. So about 3 or 4 years ago, he went to the wildlife waste station, and there he was alone most of the time. And Ed, you might know more about that, but I think that I heard he was introduced to 2 males or former entertainment chimps who are more of teenagers, and Jeter's 33. They lived together, so they had some chimp skills, but Jeter didn't really have many chimp skills. So it didn't go well. So he was still alone there. And we added him to the group, and we're thrilled. He's the sweetest boy. And as I said earlier, he's looking at the chimps around him. So we are very confident that Jeter's going to have a companion or more here. And I think the one more is Billy. Billy, they love blankets, and they carry them around, make nests. We have hammocks, we have bed shelves. Some of the males like to sleep on the floor like Billy. Most of the girls are sleeping in hammocks. So they all have their special area, and they have a lot of space to make those nests. So when they go outside, I think maybe this is a similar enclosure. They're 40 feet tall, and they're about 60 by 80 by 60, I think. And we haven't finished. This is where the Missouri chimps were, but this is the same type of enclosure. So they'll have lots of space, and we cannot wait to get them out, which hopefully will be in the next couple of weeks. I think that's it.
Wow. Those photos, Patti, thank you. They really show what a bright future these chimps have just, started jumping into. And it really shows why we're doing this, why this campaign is necessary, and what these chimps deserve. Because it's just, seeing Maud in her hammock after, I didn't realize that was so soon after transport, but seeing her so happy and content with her yummy food in her hammock, it just, this is why we're doing it. So yeah, happy tears right there looking at her. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing some of your expertise with us and how, news on how it's going. I think all the chimps look healthy and happy. And I know the way station caregivers agree on that. So
we're going to be posting, we have a lot more pictures than what we've shared with you all, but we're going to be posting them on our Facebook page over the next few weeks, every couple of days, so people can catch up on the progress and don't miss the first day that they go outside.
Can't wait. I'll definitely be crying at that video. Thank you so much, Patti. Wow. Oh. Well, next we have a different perspective, right? So we have Shaun Monson with us. Shaun has been to the way station a few times to film. These are some of his other works that you might know him from. That includes films like Earthling, Unity, Indigo, I think is one of the most recent ones, and also, of course, A Checkered Past. That's the film he made specially for us, and we can't thank him enough for volunteering his time and efforts to film and to put this all together, because it's a lot of work, and his voice and network really have benefit the chimpanzees, because it's helping to get the story of their need out to completely different audiences. And I think the audiences for Shaun's film are exactly the type of people who would care about these chimpanzees in need, right? And animals needing help. So Shaun, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you came to this point, and what inspires you, and what drove you to tell the story of the way station chimpanzees.
Well, what happened was I got an email actually over the holidays, and a lot of emails come through with different requests for different things, or different projects people are trying to get underway, or issues like this where they're concerned about the well-being of various earthlings here and there. And sometimes I don't catch the emails, and for whatever reason, this request came in alerting me to these chimps at the way station and their plight. And I happened to catch it, and I was really curious. And I think there was a phone number at the bottom. And I called that day. I said, "Okay, so what's the scoop? What's the story with them?" And they filled me in a little bit, and I started thinking about it. I was like, in 20 years of documentaries, I've really never documented chimps up close like this, and I was intrigued. But more than that, I was saddened. I was sensitive to it, because I'd learned that they'd come from labs predominantly. Most all of them had come from labs, and however long they'd spent in that type of an environment. And then they were brought to the way station. They spent a few decades there, and then it was time to find them a new home. And I don't know, something about it just touched the strings of pity or something in me. I felt really sensitive to them. And what's interesting too about an experience like this is sometimes we do forms of activism and we get enrichment back from it right away. You know, certain animals, like even domestic pets, you know, dogs and cats, you get something back immediately. And in the case with the primates like this, you don't really get close contact. You don't, there's no cuddly, fuzzy experience, at least not for me. And for many of us, there's a distance to it. You're filming through a mesh, you're keeping a distance from the mesh. And they're quite strong and powerful, and they've had their lives taken for various reasons and not on the path they chose. And so you don't get anything back in the same sense with other type of rescue work that I've documented. And yet it's deep. It's very touching and deep to experience what they're going through and to be there for that. So I had the chance to go up there. We talked with you guys. We talked with you know, some people at the way station. We talked with you, Erica from NAPSA, and I was given permission to come up, and we filmed them for one day, and then we went another day to get some more. I went home and looked at the footage, and I thought, you know, they always say it's difficult to film animals, children, film on water. These are like three things that can be really challenging. And then I remember thinking, I don't know, just something about it really got under me. And so I reached out to Joaquin and Rooney, and I said, hey, I'm doing this short piece, and if you're available, if you're between projects, would you consider this? And at first they couldn't. The first time I don't think they could come out, but we set up another time, and they were able to both come up. So then we had them there, and they could see and experience the same thing that I had experienced, and the piece began to sort of come together. It wasn't like it was a scripted piece. It was really just documenting. Well, that's the definition of a nonfiction film. You're just documenting a reality. And then I've been able to go back a few times for, as you mentioned, these, as they're beginning to be transported to their new homes. And all of this has really got me thinking about a feature film and all this. Really, it's like, if people understood, I think viewers understood really what exploitation means. You know, there's like, some people might not think having a pet is exploitation, or keeping an animal, whether it's a gecko or something in a cage, is exploitation. But if you stop for a minute and consider the life experience of the other creature on the other side that lives in that cage or lives in that space for our amusement, or so that we can profit monetarily somehow from this, you begin to really, you know, feel compassion for them and their life, and they've lived many, many decades, you know. And I think there's a story here, a broad story that could be shared with the world, how, you know, we bred these animals because at the time, particularly during the time of AIDS, you know, they're so similar to us, so they bred them tremendously and tested on, only to find out that they didn't really, the AIDS of the chimp wasn't the same as an AIDS of the human. So now the labs were full of chimps, and then now they're protected, but there's all this red tape and all these issues, and they're sort of stuck. And that's where the title came from, A Checkered Past. You know, they just sort of come from this, they've lived these lives, and these beautiful sanctuaries come along, and they raise money and buy land and build enclosures and pay a staff, and then have volunteers and feed them and care for them for the rest of their lives, which is just extraordinary. It's extraordinarily beautiful what these various sanctuaries can do. I just, anyway, I'm humbled by it, and I was grateful for the opportunity. And I hope that answered your question, Erica. Sorry for the long response.
No, that was wonderful. You hit on so many of the points that are relevant here. I know what's striking to me, and you did mention it, is just how the pasts of these chimpanzees have already been traumatic, right? From whether they came from a laboratory or whether they were privately owned. And now they're at a facility that's shutting down. And while they may not realize that they're in danger right now, their welfare is endangered. And we're so grateful that, you know, there are some people that have stepped up to oversee their immediate needs. And we'll hear what California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Way Station are collaborating on to keep them safe in the meantime, but they just can't stay where they are. and there's wildfires and there's the risk of money, drying up. And there's so much to worry about that, to think that these chimpanzees were, purposefully bred for human needs. And now they're just sort of, tossed aside and someone has to save them. So having your talents to tell that story and to, have new eyes learn this and be aware of the issues, it's really striking. And I think, their long lifespans too point out why it's so troubling that they're in this position too, because hopefully they have many more decades of life ahead of them. And so when you think about them being moved from, these sort of outdated caging and outdated infrastructure in these facilities to Center for Great Apes, let's say, where, it's like a whole new world for them. And that's why this is such a rewarding campaign. And you're right, we don't get the snuggles, we don't get hugs from them. I know a lot of people have seen that video of Jane Goodall being hugged by a chimp as she was re-released into the wild, and we don't get to do that type of stuff, and that's okay, but we get other rewards. So
yeah, she's the exception to the rule, of course, with her life. I mean, some of us, truth be told, get feces thrown at us. It's almost the opposite. You get spit on, and
I know Joaquin was spit on, right? But I think by
I was too. It's just what it happens. But I don't know. You go live 30 years and looking through mesh at the sky your whole life and on concrete, and some people come and look at you. You might be like, what's that? We don't know enough about animal cognition. We really don't. What they're thinking. We like to think we do,
right?
But we really don't, or we wouldn't do maternal deprivation studies to these animals, and we wouldn't put them through the rigors of this, because we have various human ills and ailments, and so that we create, probably because of our lifestyle predominantly, if we're being honest. There could be environmental and some genetics, but the most of it is a lifestyle choice. And so we get sick, and then we say, well, give me a solution to this. So we go find these other creatures and we put them through the rigors of this, which doesn't always work. I mean, animal testing later has to go into human trials, and often what happened in animal testing doesn't work. And it's not that hard to understand. I have dogs, for instance. My dogs can drink water from the gutter. If I drank from the gutter, I'd get sick, and so different biologies. And I don't know what it is about us trying to wake up to this natural empathy or compassion, as if we lost it somehow, or we should have it. Clearly they're having a life experience. They're here, they're here the same as us. They're, like I said, like you said, mortality is measured in decades. So they're here for a duration, same as us. And they know pain and they know pleasure. And so it's really a simple correlation you can make between animals and ourselves that for some reason people forget, and that it's okay to do this to them, but not to us. And so sometimes these type of images or stories, I think, remind people or awaken something that might be dormant and have a positive effect.
Oh, absolutely. Images, and especially moving images, can do that. And I think that's why there's no doubt when we look at Maud in the hammock with her fruits and veggies, I mean, she's happy, right? We can tell that she's content, and it may not be the same definition of happy that we have, but she is safe and content. And that is the goal for these chimpanzees.
Right.
So thank you, Shaun. I feel like I could ask you 20 more questions right now, and there will be time for more questions later. But we just can't say enough about your assistance and the team that you brought on to help tell the story of the chimpanzees.
Happy to be part of all the work you guys are doing.
Thank you. It's a beautiful relationship.
Thank you. It is. Yeah. And we still have more ahead. So
yeah, we do. That's perfect lead into what I'm about to say. So thanks. And if you have questions for Shaun or anyone else, please put them in the chat box, and we're going to try to hit as many of them as we can at the end here. But he's right. We do have more work ahead of us, and hopefully Shaun will stay along for the ride. There are still 18 chimpanzees remaining at the way station. So we absolutely are thrilled that more than half of them have been moved. When the way station shut, there were 42 chimpanzees. One elderly chimp passed away of natural causes, and we have rehomed 23. So we've got those 18, and they are top of the mind right now. And so I want to talk about what we need to accomplish in 2022 to help them. But first, I think it's important to have Ed Pert from California Department of Fish and Wildlife talk about what life is like right now for those 18 that remain. So Ed, let's have you speak up and give us some new information here.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. It's really hard to follow Shaun after that, giving this little update. But good morning, everyone. And again, thanks for joining us today. I'll try to be brief because I think that many of you have heard this before. First, I wanted to be sure that everyone knows that the caretakers at Wildlife Way Station are doing an outstanding job. The remaining 18 chimps there are super well cared for. I get this question all the time, you know, do we need to move them because they're not being cared for? And people think that maybe that's the case, but people need to remember that some of these caretakers have been with these chimps for over 30 years, which is just amazing to me. And the chimps that remain there are just really well loved and cared for. So I wanted to say that first and foremost. But there's still a real need to move these chimps for a lot of reasons, and we need to move them as soon as we can. First, like was mentioned by Erica earlier, serious threats of wildfire at Wildlife Way Station. Anyone who's been there would know that that's the case. I worry about this all the time. We've had recent Santa Ana winds even into December recently, and so it's just a difficult place to hold chimps for that reason. It's also expensive, as I think you know, to house chimps. It costs about $3,000 per chimp per month, somewhere in that ballpark. And then the facilities at Wildlife Way Station are compared to what these other sanctuaries have. And I think you've all seen that. If you've been able to watch some of the videos and you saw some of the photos here of where the chimps are headed, you'll know that we want to get those chimps to that really great place, those great places as soon as we can. The spaces there are just so much larger, more diverse, and better for the chimps. And then the majority of these expenses that we're incurring are covered by my department, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, along with the support of Wildlife Way Station, and then the dedicated donors like yourselves. So we're just really grateful. I mean, for me personally, that this community has come together. It takes a village and all that so that we can care for these amazing animals in the ways that Shaun was mentioning. You know, it's just a beautiful thing when you see animals cared for like this that don't deserve what they've had to go through. So I know that personally, I've really gained an appreciation for chimps. I'm not a chimp biologist. I'm a fish and wildlife biologist by training, and I have really come to really love the chimps. And I did not have that appreciation and really like love for them that I've been able to experience now that I've been able to spend quite a bit of time with them. So I'm really lucky in that way. And then I would just say, like, sadly, besides the day-to-day work of keeping everything moving and going, really our effort at this time comes down to money. And I think if we had the funds we need, when we have those funds, we can move these chimps quickly to new homes. We just need to make that happen, and we will. So I think with that hopeful tone of we're going to make it happen, we just need some funds. I want to thank all of you again for your generosity and your interest in this project. We still have a ways to go, but we're so much further than when we started, and we're going to get there with everyone's support. So thanks again for all you've done and just your interest in the project. And back to you, Erica.
Thanks, Ed. It's certainly, you know, we keep saying it takes a village, and it absolutely does to keep this project running. And we're really grateful that Fish and Wildlife has stepped in to oversee the immediate needs of the sanctuary, even things, you know, like the water delivery and the security of the site and all those things, and that the way station caregivers have remained there to care for the chimpanzees. It all just says volumes and speaks volumes about those individual people and their love of the animals. So we're so happy to be working with all of them. So the campaign is determined to rehome the remaining 18 chimpanzees in 2022 so that the way station can be completely shut down. That is the goal. We're getting much, much, much closer. We know, again, that 11 of them will go to Chimp Haven, and then there's a group of 5 and a group of 2 chimps for whom we are still seeking the best home. Now, we have sanctuaries interested in helping, and we are evaluating that. We have a great coalition of chimpanzee placement experts that we're discussing all the options through with, and we hope to share news of their placement just as soon as we can. Now, we're working really hard to raise the money that we need to ensure that these chimps have what they need for the long term. Moving those that haven't left the way station yet, supporting the cost of the transportation, which is significant, to their new homes, and even the cost of their care at those new sanctuaries. Asking a chimpanzee sanctuary to care for a new chimp that may have, again, many decades of life ahead of them is a significant ask. And so we're not taking that lightly. And it's one reason why we are being so cautious with where these chimpanzees are placed. We are only placing them at accredited sanctuaries, and that is because we have to make sure that they're not placed somewhere that is going to experience the financial hardships that the way station experienced that ultimately led to its closure. Now, I want to point out that all funds raised by this campaign go directly to the chimpanzee care and rehoming. So no humans are being paid by this. Our fundraising partners, 7th Generation Advisors, who manage the funds directly, they are doing this all pro bono, and we're so grateful for that because that's not something NAPSA itself could have done. And so we're raising money for 3 needs of the chimpanzees. It's the construction of their new homes at each of the sanctuaries. It's the cost of their ongoing care at the sanctuaries once they're rehomed for a period of time, and the cost of their ongoing care at the way station while the construction is underway at their new homes. So far, we have not had to spend money on their current care, with a few minor exceptions relating to some water deliveries, but overall we haven't, and we're really grateful for that. But we need to be prepared just in case, because there's still 18 chimpanzees who have expensive daily needs awaiting outside Los Angeles. So thank you for joining us today. We have plenty of time for Q&A right now. The support we've received so far from all of you has been truly heartwarming. And, you know, we have more to do, and we're really grateful to be at the point that we're at, and looking forward to what we're going to accomplish in 2022 and what victories and transports we're going to celebrate. So I think now is a good time to start looking at those questions. And I know we have Cassie Carter, who's one of our fundraising consultants, has been behind the scenes, and, you know, she has a good idea of what some of these questions coming in are. I know I can't read them and talk at the same time, so I'm not as caught up as Cassie is. So let's see. Yes.
Thank you, Erica. That's great. And we are getting some really great questions coming in, and thank you guys all for rejoining us. So one of the questions that came in was asking about the enclosures, and this is probably a question for Ed, asking about the enclosures at the way station. If some of these the equipment that's there, would that be available to other sanctuaries? And what's happening to everything at the way station, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And in fact, kind of an interesting answer, because when this whole thing started, we did not have the machinery we have in place now to raise money. And we were scrambling to make sure that we could literally make it to the next month. And they sold off a lot of their equipment to raise money so that they could continue to care for the chimps. In fact, they sold off some things that we continued to need, which created a problem for us because we had to go track down, you know, trailers and trucks and this kind of thing from around the state, literally, from my perspective, to make sure that we were going to be able to evacuate if needed. So they are basically keeping absolutely what they need. They've sold off everything that they don't need, but there's still lots of caging and all of that on the facility. That there's a lot of infrastructure there that I don't know what will happen once it closes. But I know that at the same time, I've been in meetings with people that are trying to get the caging from Wildlife Way Station. So there are other sanctuaries that need it. And so there's an effort like that around too. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, and while we'll have to see what remains once the final chimps leave and how that all works out. But it really would be great to have the sanctuaries benefit however they could from what might be left and usable. For sure. I know a lot of it is aging though, and we'll have to evaluate at that time. One question that came through from, trying to find it now, Shelly Johnson about, is there a compilation of individual chimpanzee histories that includes those of chimps born at laboratories like Yerkes and what happened to them? So it looks like she has a personal interest in that. And Shelly, if you go to NAPSA's website, it's primatesanctuaries.org. You can email us through that and that'll come right to me. And I'd be happy to approach some of our members like Miss Patti Ragan, who has a really good, almost encyclopedic memory of chimpanzee histories and where they might be. So I'm happy to help you with that. I don't have the specifics right now for the chimpanzee you mentioned, but I'm happy to help you.
And Erica, a lot of there's a lot of questions and interest in some of the next steps related to Chimp Haven. Can you walk us through the timeline and what needs to happen more specifically before those chimps can be moved?
Yeah, so we are now going to be focused on Chimp Haven's fundraising efforts. So thanks to that incredible gift from American Anti-Vivisection Society that we just received wind of today, we have hit the fundraising goal for Center for Great Apes, and we're so grateful about that. So we're going to focus on and I should say the construction fundraising goal for Center for Great Apes. We're going to focus on the construction fundraising goal for Chimp Haven, since that is the next group of chimps that we expect to be leaving. We hope that they will be leaving in spring of 2022. Chimp Haven is still expanding and building, and they have hit some delays like all the sanctuaries are experiencing right now in relation to not only materials shortages, but labor shortages. So it's just, I know the price has something like tripled since they first quoted us for this rescue effort. So there are some challenges there, but they're dedicated, of course, just like Center for Great Apes was, to doing this as quickly as possible. And so we are going to have a renewed flow of attention to Chimp Haven. And I know they are also going to be focused their internal fundraising efforts on Chimpanzees in Need at the start of the new year. So you're going to expect to hear a lot of talk about Chimp Haven coming from NAPSA and Chimps in Need.
Thank you, Erica. One question that I think really is probably best for Patti around adjusting, how chimps adjust after being pets. And you talked with us a little bit about Jeter and his challenges. And we have some interest in hearing a little bit more about what that's like for them and why that's such a challenge.
It's interesting because we do have quite a few expat and entertainment chimpanzees here. And, you know, in the wild and even in an accredited zoo today, a baby would stay with its mother and learn everything from its mother. And they nurse 4 to 6 years on a chimpanzee. And when they're pulled within weeks to be sold as pets or even as entertainers, they don't learn just normal chimp skills, communication skills. They have over 70 vocalizations, but it's not, come here, baby, you know, that kind of thing. That's what they respond to when they've grown up as a pet. And then, of course, by age 7, 8, they become way too strong to be around members of the family. And that's when we start to see people having problems with them. And we get them when they're adolescents and teenagers, if they're coming directly out of a home. And they do have issues, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. There are more experienced chimpanzees that we can often introduce them to. I have to tell you a story about Bubbles because he is living here and everybody knows that he was raised as a pet by Michael Jackson. Michael loved him. He lived after he was 6 or 7 at the trainer's compound in California and was introduced to an older chimp named Sam, and was 14 years older than Bubbles. And he guided Bubbles a lot. And when Bubbles came here, he was about 20 and he is 37 now. And he was in a group with Sam and a few females, and he was terrified of the females because he hadn't really been with them yet. But over time, and some hard lessons to learn where the females put him in his place, he started taking a position and is now the dominant male in a group of 7, and does really well. The girls groom him all the time. He has a best friend, Ripley, and you know, I think that it just is time. And who knows, Jeter may actually go into Bubbles' group. I don't know yet, but Bubbles is a really sweet, accepting chimpanzee of other chimps. And he could, being the dominant, it could be there. We're not sure, but it's a challenge when they're raised like people because they can act like people. They're anthropomorphic animals and anthropods. And so they are very much like us, and they have very much the same sentientness and a high intelligence. But when the strength and the canine teeth and the strength of a 7-year-old is stronger than an adult human. And so suddenly you have a conflict there, and they don't understand why they've been put in with other chimps or why they're isolated in the backyard. We took one chimp who was 45 years old, and he had been with this family for the whole time. He was a circus chimp, wild caught. When he came here, he was terrified of all our chimps, but he found a companion in another male. And that 45-year-old is 62 now, our oldest chimp at the sanctuary, and he lives with a 50-year-old wild caught chimp that was in the Ringling Brothers circus, and they have not gone into a bigger group. But that is one thing I think that's important with sanctuary work. You know, we know that chimps live in huge communities in the wild, and in a lot of zoos, they will live in groups of 2, 4, 5, up to 15, 20, depending on the zoo. And certainly in some of the bigger sanctuaries that have large outdoor spaces. But I think it depends on the chimp, and we are unique in that we have more expats and entertainment chimpanzees than our colleagues do. And so we kind of just meet their needs. And most of our groups are 6 or 7. We have a couple of groups that are 4, but there's a couple that are just pairs that just have bonded with each other, which is the goal of having a chimp companion, but not yet been able to go into bigger groups. So it is individual.
That
Okay.
individualized care is really, really valuable. And that is why we're so dedicated to rehoming these chimps to facilities that can give them that attention.
Thank you so much, Patti. So Shaun, we have strong interest in wondering how you manage to convince some of the very busy and sometimes elusive celebrities to join you in sharing these stories and telling these tales. What's your secret sauce for actually finding some success around that?
I don't think I have any special secret sauce of any kind. Of just, you know, I'll ask and you know, if I have a relationship with them, I've worked with them in the past, they'll ask a little more context, you know, what's happening. And so I fill them in, and and then sometimes they can't, you know, I get told no more often than I get told yes, because they're busy and they're gone, you know, or they're just, they have lives they're living as well. And so, and they get asked these kind of favors or requests 4 or 5 times every day, you know, so, or more. So there's lots of needs out there that need to be exposed, and celebrities help, of course. I got lucky. In fact, I think we talked about this, Erica, but I said, because I knew, and both Joaquin and Rooney were getting ready to do films. They were leaving to do films. And if we didn't shoot it before, I think a certain 2-week period, we would essentially lose them. They were leaving the country. And so, you know, that's how, there's some logistics there, really, but you just ask. They're humans before they're celebrities. Are humans, and they're interested in animals. They've shown empathy for animals. Some of these people I've worked with. And so you start there, and if they can, then great. Then we get lucky and they come, and they're just like any viewer. They're just a human being witnessing what's happening to the animals. It's really about the animals, but hopefully their name or their involvement maybe shines a light on the brighter to the world.
Do you remember, like, did Joaquin and Rooney tell you what they found most striking after their visit at the weigh station and after they filmed with you?
Sometimes I'll hear it when I'm editing, because I'll have a mic on them, and I'll hear, like in the case of what we shot there, I was pretty much working alone. Sometimes I had one other person that came with me. Mostly I had to come alone because we had COVID restrictions and we had other safety protocols, and it was, you know, quite one of the strictest shoots I've ever been on was really this stuff. We were pretty much a one-man band most of the time, just myself. So when you're doing sound and you have a couple cameras, then I'm in like this technical mode. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure everything's recording and working and in focus, so that I capture what's happening. And I remember hearing, Rooney has a lot of experience with primates. She's shown an interest in that for many, many years. So she was already really very interested in helping in any way she could. And then with Joaquin, I remember once just listening, because I had the headphones on, and when we got there, I just heard him really low under his breath just go, whoa, like just seeing them come up. I could just hear that. Sometimes those quiet moments tell you everything. And he was in awe, and then he too was concerned about where they'd come from and how long had they been there and what's their fate going to be, because we didn't know when we started shooting where any of these chimps were going to go yet, if they could go somewhere. So those are the ways that I learn how they feel about them.
Yeah, I remember that moment because I know you put it in when he says, whoa, and
Yeah, I can hear him. Yeah.
that group of chimps, I think it's Billy in particular is very rambunctious with visitors, and he was displaying, when chimps are trying to show off their strength. And Billy in particular has a vocalization that sounds like a lion roaring, or at least he did at the way station. I'd be curious to hear if he continues it at Center for Great Apes, but they think it might be because a lion was housed near the chimp enclosure. And they think he sort of mimicked that roar. And it was really bone chilling to hear it, because even knowing that they're encaging, it was overwhelming at first.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're referencing.
Yeah. And they are awesome. I know that word awesome gets used in Hollywood and in California casually, but I think the true definition of awesome is to look at creatures like this, behold them, and see what they are. It's amazing.
Yeah. And, in another sense, I know sometimes it can be I feel sort of speechless when I think about the chimpanzees that are still there, and how do we get them out? How, it's so miraculous that we've saved 23 already, but now there's still those 18, and they're just as important as the 23. And why, how did they get to this point where they're, stuck at a closed facility in Los Angeles? They should be in Africa. They shouldn't be here at all. Yeah. So there's lots of issues that you can discuss in your full-length film, Shaun.
They'll come up, and I know every time I'm there, I start talking to people, and I'm picking their brains and saying, tell me about this, tell me how this works. Because I like to come at it from the point of view of the viewer who doesn't really know anything, and hopefully is it interesting, number one, because there's so much content to choose from. There's just so much they can watch, so much high quality premium content that comes out weekly, that the quiet, small little advocacy messages can get lost in it. And so I find myself asking all these questions to the vet techs or to the workers or yourself or your staff or to Ed. Ed and I was asking him all kinds of questions about California Department of Wildlife, just like what he sees, what these guys encounter out there. It's fascinating, the things he told me, what they go through. And of course, the animals are caught in the middle. So if there's a way to put that into a composition, again, that has a positive effect, that's what interests me, for sure.
And what's challenging too is that a true sanctuary, doesn't exploit the animals, doesn't use them for entertainment, doesn't take them out of the caging to perform or do anything like that in front of a camera. So it adds another layer of difficulty in telling their stories, right? Because you don't have great images sometimes. I know you struggled with how to shoot them effectively behind the caging, and with lighting, with trees overhead, and they move so fast. It's not easy.
What happens is like we would, a filmmaker like myself would talk to someone like Patti and just say, okay, someone who's close, who sees them on a much more frequent basis and already has an interest in the welfare of them, spent their life devoted to helping them. And activists like Patti and other sanctuaries become the ambassador, because the animals can't speak for themselves. They do have a voice. We just can't, we don't hear it, or it's fallen into disuse for us. We're just not sensitive enough to it. So we rely on these people who work close with them to articulate and interpret. It's a form of interpret. In a way, people like Patti are translating. They're translating to us what they see and what they go through. And then you hope that the film as a vehicle is really nothing more a delivery device for that information and hopefully that compassion. And in the case of raising money, use it to raise money from the people who have the means, who also, see the plight of these animals, which we created, and they need help, and sanctuaries need help to get them moved. And it's a good thing. Who doesn't want to help, really save a lion or a whale or a chimpanzee or an animal that has been for decades? Decades. It's the least we could do, is raise a little money and tell their story and get them home.
Absolutely. We have a good suggestion here in the comments. Kathleen Corby said your full-length film can be called Caught in the Middle. Because indeed they are, right?
They sure are. Yeah.
Well, it's very inspiring to hear you talk about this, and there's just so much. Yeah.
I just want to say, because I know there are people in this on this webinar right now that everybody probably has contributed toward this project. And I know that I am so grateful, because we have it in our heart I'd like to help those 18. That would be another $2 or $3 million project. But we can't do anything we do without our supporters, our foundations that have been so generous, and individual donors. It does mean everything to these chimps, and in our case, orangutans, but it means everything to us too, and to the sanctuary being successful. And by the same token, we're still raising money. Our budget went from $150,000 a year 25 years ago to $2.5 million right now with the Great Apes. This coming year is budgeted at $2.5 million. That's just operations. But we're also raising money for more construction and for orangutans right now. And we're raising an endowment, and that's really important. The money that we have in the bank that we can rely on, that if we have a bad year, a COVID year, or a 2009 year where stocks crash, we have to pay our staff, and we have to buy food for these animals and pay for vet care. And so I think it's really important that our donors know too, it's not just about building it, it's repairing it in 20 years, it's paying the light bill every month, it's paying the heat bill for those night houses, paying the staff to take care of them. And you know, we have 36 staff right now, very devoted, and about 50 volunteers who haven't been here for a year or so with COVID. So the donors make it, you know, we get to do it, but we can't do it without our donors. And I just want to say thank you to everybody on this webinar, including Erica and Shaun, and certainly Ed and Kate and Cassie for supporting this effort to go forward.
Thank you, Patti.
Can I add something to that? Just really quickly, because what Patti said is ringing so true for me now. Again, this isn't the world that I live in of you know, keeping animals, but since I was thrown into it, boy, do I understand the fear and the anxiety that people like Patti and others deal with all the time. You have animals that need to be fed. It's like you have to feed your family, and you cannot fail. And it is really a huge sense of responsibility, just from my perspective, not having dealt with that in the past. So thank you all, you know, to people like Patti, and the donors, because man, we just could not do it without all of those parts in place, and the money to continue to come forward. It's a daunting responsibility. So thank you, Patti.
It's true. And, you know, I've had some donors ask me, why is it so expensive? Why do we have to raise so much money? Because, you know, NAPSA has never done anything like this before. And we're, you know, millions of dollars is daunting to raise, but truly that's how much it costs to responsibly house and prepare to care for these animals for extended periods of time. And so it's very important to us that we not create another collapsed facility with the placements that we're doing. We have to place them in homes that will care for them throughout their entire lifetimes. So, you know, one of the goals of this fundraiser is that when we're done, and we will be done, this is not, you know, a forever thing, but when Chimpanzees in Need is no longer in need, that the donors can continue supporting the sanctuaries who stepped up to help the way station chimpanzees. So perhaps that can be one of the legacies of all this, is that there's new appreciation and new donors available to help the chimpanzees and help the sanctuaries caring for them, because they do such important life-saving work. So there's more information on your screen right now. I think we're right about to close out, but you can stay in touch with Chimps in Need at chimpsinneed.org. Also through NAPSA's social media accounts. That's where we share all the news, and you can sign up for our newsletter, but also for Center for Great Apes, because Patti has lots of great photos that they haven't even shared yet, and they'll continue sharing news. And I promise you, when you see way station chimpanzees go out on grass for the first time, just have tissues next to you, because I saw it happen when these chimps went out at Chimpanzee Sanctuary Northwest. They rescued a group called the Lucky Six, and when some of them started going out on grass, it was just wonderful to see. So you can follow Center for Great Apes at their accounts listed on the screen here, and at centerforgreatapes.org. So thank you, everyone. Right, Willie B. Someone just commented, it's Willie B that was walking on the grass in Washington there. And wonderful stuff. So thank you. I can't thank you enough for being part of our village. Thank you to Shaun and Patti and Ed for joining us, because it was really interesting to have these conversations today. And we're just very grateful to be at the point that we're at. And we look forward to working with all of you in 2022 and seeing all the way station chimps be rehomed. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.